So, all right, so we're going to get started. Tonight's presentation is going to be on two subjects. We're doing AmeriCorps 101, which is sort of the history and general information about how AmeriCorps works, including like the benefits and the communities that are served and information about how AmeriCorps came to be. And then we're going to do a second presentation on prohibited and allowable activities, which is going to be about how AmeriCorps members need to function when they're performing their service and about what restrictions apply to them, given the fact that they are funded in part by federal dollars. So it's going to be a two-part. We're going to, I guess, try to go through this relatively quickly. I'm going to see if I can get through it in maybe 50 minutes or something like that, an hour. And
starting the stopwatch.
Yeah, start the stopwatch. I won't pause as frequently, Kelsey, just because that way we won't have all these hypothetical rhetorical questions. We'll just interact with you directly. You will have to answer what you think on a couple of the questions that we have on prohibited and allowable, but otherwise we should get through it relatively quickly. And if you want, we can also take 5 minutes in the middle for you to take a break if you need to use the restroom or stretch your legs or something. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen.
So what happened? Nobody called, just one?
Andy's got it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, can you all see that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. All right, so first things first, I just want to give a shout out to two of our AmeriCorps program directors, Anne at Global Game Changers and Caitlin at Homes for All. They're the people who helped develop a lot of this content, and I'm stealing a little bit of it with their permission. They basically put together all the examples, and they've based a lot of the content on real life questions and real life experiences that different AmeriCorps members have had over the years. So I just want to give a shout out to them. Anne and Caitlin are still running programs successfully as we speak. And so there's a possibility, Kelsey, that you may interact with them at some point over the next program year. Where are you based? Where's your service site? Maybe she'll get to them. So, well, I'll just keep on going.
Easel Elementary. Is that in Moorhead? Morgan County. All right. And is that through MSU Corps? Excellent.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you for joining us. To get started, we want to talk a little bit about the history of AmeriCorps. So when people hear the term national service, a lot of them think of military service. They think of joining one of the armed forces, and so you're a Marine or an Army Reserve person, or you're in the Navy or something like that. But there's actually a really long and pretty illustrious history of non-military national service that goes back all the way to the Great Depression and to the federal program that was started to create jobs. It was called the New Deal. So there's some famous New Deal programs that employed millions and millions of people, including the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Works Progress Administration, and others.
Okay.
And these programs were responsible for keeping a lot of people employed during the depths of the Great Depression. And they also were responsible for creating a lot of the public infrastructure that's available to citizens and residents of the United States all throughout the country. So for example, any park that you go to that's more than 50 years old probably has had some interaction with the Civilian Conservation Corps, because those are the people who a lot of times would cut roads, they would comb out gravel, they would create lodges and restrooms and lay piping so that water could be run into certain areas. And a lot of people forget, or they never know in the first place, that those people who worked for the Civilian Conservation Corps were National Service members. So, the program goes back almost 100 years. And then it's kind of the modern version of it starts in the 1960s with the Kennedy administration. And so President Kennedy creates the Peace Corps, who are a national service that go overseas to promote democracy and development in other countries. And at the same time, they also create some programs domestically, like the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, the Foster Grandparent Program, and the Senior Companion Program, all of which are about using senior members who want to volunteer in their communities to give back and help them connect with people who need help. At the same time, they also create the VISTA program, which is sort of like the the domestic version of Peace Corps. So VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America, and it's created by President Johnson as part of his War on Poverty, or part of the Great Society program is another way to discuss it. And VISTAs the program still exists today, and it's very similar to AmeriCorps, but the idea is that you start creating a climate where the government is not only familiar with how to run these programs, but they actually encourage people to sign up, and they do a year of service or something like that, and then in return they get some sort of benefit from it. So in the 1970s, the Nixon administration decides that they're going to combine the Senior Service Program, Peace Corps, and VISTA together, all under one roof, and they call it the Action Agency. And so that agency existed for a decade or two. And then we fast forward again to 1994, or 1993 actually, which is when CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service, is created. So that is the organization that's responsible for overseeing AmeriCorps, VISTA, Senior Corps. And CNCS is built on some committees that were created by the George H.W. Bush administration. But in 1994, they create AmeriCorps as a program, and CNCS is responsible for it. As you can see, in both the George H.W. Bush administration, the Clinton years, during the George W. Bush administration, various leaders promote and support national service in different ways. They create the first AmeriCorps Week in 2007. You'll learn a little bit more about that. When Obama is elected to the presidency, he signs into legislation the Edward M. Kennedy Service Act, which dramatically expands and prolongs the AmeriCorps program. So it strengthens the type of service that people can do and provides the funding necessary to make that happen. They create the Social Innovation Fund. They start launching strategic plans and create FEMA Corps, which is specifically for allocating members to deal with natural disasters within the United States. And then that leads us up to the present day. So just some general facts about AmeriCorps. Over 1 million members have served since 1994. Of those members who have served, they've contributed over 1 billion hours of volunteer service. In terms of the number of children who've been affected by AmeriCorps, over 5.2 million have been tutored, mentored, or directly served by AmeriCorps members like yourself. The federal government has given out over $2.4 billion in education award to the AmeriCorps members since AmeriCorps' creation. AmeriCorps members have mobilized or managed over 4 million community volunteers. And they serve in over 15,000 nonprofit, faith-based, and community service organizations. So obviously it's a really big scope. It affects a lot of people, and the numbers are really huge. So it's pretty interesting to think about all the goodwill that AmeriCorps has incurred over the past 26 years. So the question that you or anybody might ask when they want to know more about AmeriCorps is, why would you join AmeriCorps? And the first reason, of course, is to help other people. Now, obviously, there's some other benefits, like you learn career skills. If you have a desire to help out in your community, if you're looking for a sense of adventure, if you want the tangible benefits that AmeriCorps offers, All of those are valid reasons, but the main reason that we share and the main reason that we hope you promote when you talk to people both now and afterwards about your AmeriCorps service is that you do it because you want to help other people and you want to be of service to your community. So another reason why people might serve is because of the benefits that are associated with it. And you know a little bit about this because hopefully Joe and some of the people at MSU have shared them, but you get a living allowance as part of your service. You get access to a couple different healthcare options. You get deferment for your federal student loans if you have any. You obviously get on-the-job training that's part of your service. And you get the ability to network with people and learn more about what your program does. And you get a Siegel Award, which, as we mentioned earlier, is the federal education benefit that you can use to pay for college, grad school, trade school, tech school, or you can use to pay back student loans. So there's a number of different benefits, and how you use them is sort of up to you. So one thing that I like to advocate for is now that you're starting your year of service, you should think about what you hope to accomplish while you're there, and think about what you want to take with you after you complete your service. So if you have a particular career field in mind, if there's something you want to get really good at, if you want to think about possibly signing up for another term of AmeriCorps, or maybe get involved in another national service program like NCCC or VISTA, the choice is up to you. But in my experience, people get the most benefit when they think about what they want to accomplish and what they hope to take away, knowing that a year or however long your service term is going to pass a lot quicker than you probably think it is. So just start thinking about that now. The other side of the question, the previous question, is who benefits from AmeriCorps? So we discussed what the benefits are, but now you can ask, well, who yields the benefits from this? And the short answer is we all do. Youth, seniors, and others in needs benefit from the tutoring, mentoring, health, housing, and other services that are provided by AmeriCorps. Communities benefit from the results of AmeriCorps programming, such as having better schools, safer streets, more affordable housing, a cleaner environment, and more engaged citizens. The organizations, the nonprofits that help sponsor AmeriCorps gain a lot from having more reach and impact. Out of a group that was surveyed, 92% of the sponsoring groups said that members have helped increase how many people they serve to a large or moderate extent. And then lastly, you as a member learn leadership skills and career skills. You learn how to be a worker on a team, and you'll learn all sorts of things in your service for MSU, in addition to gaining money for college and becoming a more active citizen. So ultimately, everyone benefits from the AmeriCorps experience. And this looks a lot of different ways. So AmeriCorps today is spread out through a wide geographical space, and it also addresses a number of different areas. So AmeriCorps members do teaching and tutoring, they mentor, they help build homes, they fight poverty, they respond to disasters, they provide health services, they recruit and manage volunteers, any number of other things. And there's people doing almost all of these same activities right here in the state of Kentucky as we speak. So this isn't just AmeriCorps as a national organization. This is also happening sometimes in your own backyard. So it's really cool to think about all the different things that AmeriCorps members do and how wide their influence is. Another thing to recognize is, as we mentioned earlier, CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service, is sort of the top of the flow chart. And AmeriCorps is actually just one of several programs that's within CNCS. So we also mentioned Senior Corps earlier. We mentioned AmeriCorps, and then there's a couple different versions of AmeriCorps. So when you think of yourself as being an AmeriCorps member, you're actually one specific type of AmeriCorps compared to these other people who are all part of the same national service family tree. So here's the divisions that we're going to talk about for AmeriCorps specifically. There's AmeriCorps State and National. There's AmeriCorps Vista, and there's AmeriCorps NCCC. So all of these are three separate programs, and they're administered a little bit differently, and they also do different things, but they all fit under the umbrella of AmeriCorps, which is part of the CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service. So I, for example, am an AmeriCorps Vista alum. I did a term of service as a Vista a few years ago, and now I work for the State Service Commission. And I'll explain what the State Service Commission is in a little bit, but we want you to get an idea of how your service fits in with this whole rich history and this broad expanse of all these different people working at all these different levels.
Absolutely. And I want to chime in real quick and just say, for your benefit, Kelsey, I am an AmeriCorps alum as well. I served for 2 years, although it was a hot minute ago. I'm now working for the State Commission, and I'm glad to see that this is your second year. We'll see if we can't make this more like an AmeriCorps 101.5. This information is really good to have refreshed in your system at this point in time and starting a second year, because you do have other options still available, and it does give you a deeper understanding and appreciation of what service is and what the AmeriCorps experience is as well.
Yeah,
Anyway, please continue, Andrew.
I appreciate that. That's a really good point to make. So, you know, you've heard a lot of this information before, but I think it's really valuable because as you know from your experience, you know, you're also, in addition to performing service, you're also sort of a representative for MSU Corps and for AmeriCorps in general. And so we like to do this refresher because it's really valuable when you interact with people in the community, where you can tell them what you do and how you fit into this program. Because, you know, one of the best ways for us to recruit more AmeriCorps members is to have people share their experience. You know, they say, this is what I did, this is, you know, this is the impact that I had in my community, or this is the impact I had through my service. And that's really valuable. So we'll go through the three segments of AmeriCorps real quickly. AmeriCorps State and National is the largest branch of AmeriCorps. There's about 75,000 people who serve every year. It has positions that are in all these different areas, and it's sponsored by different nonprofits and community service organizations like Habitat for Humanity, Teach for America, Red Cross, and many, many, many other organizations.
In your case, it's Morehead State University. And in my case, I actually focused on housing opportunities for individuals who were homeless. I served through the Shelter of Hope in Ashland, Kentucky for 2 years. It was an absolutely formative experience in my adult life.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ted. So Vistas, as we mentioned previously, Vista was founded in 1964. It's the poverty fighting arm of the AmeriCorps service family. It has less members in it because it's generally a little bit more intense and a little more inflexible than a regular AmeriCorps service. And Vistas don't perform direct service with their community. They help build capacity in their organization. So, for example, in Ted's situation, as an AmeriCorps member, a person might go out and actually interact with clients who need homelessness or housing services. Whereas a Vista would actually probably be working in the office or in a different part of the organization where they're helping expand a program or develop a new way to treat and meet the needs of homeless or housing unstable individuals. And then there's AmeriCorps NCCC, which you may or may not have heard of. NCCC is the National Civilian Community Corps. It's the offshoot of the Civilian Conservation Corps that we mentioned from the New Deal program. It's a team-based program that is deployed from 5 different campuses throughout the country. So there's campuses in California and Colorado and Mississippi and Maryland and so forth. And then they get deployed to different states that are surrounding them for service projects, which can be disaster response, in park service, environmental programs, youth services, housing, all sorts of different things. The NCCC teams serve for 10 months, and I would say, realistically speaking, they're probably the most intense of the AmeriCorps people. just
They really are. They can be deployed in a variety of areas, and are often they find themselves in very interesting and potentially challenging situations, but also just deeply rewarding in general.
yeah, definitely. So those are the different groups of the AmeriCorps part of the CNCS network. And that's what the experience is like. As you know, having already completed a service year, you have a good idea of what the experience entails, and you probably have a good idea of what's going to happen in this next service year. But, you know, most everybody moves on after a year or two, and it's important to remember that as an alum, you know, you have a network that you can tie into. The AmeriCorps alum network is very big. As Ted and I mentioned, we're both AmeriCorps alums. And AmeriCorps alumni tend to be more connected to their communities, more participatory in their communities, and they choose public service careers at much higher levels than their peers. So if you have any interest in those things, your service experience as an AmeriCorps member is going to really position you to be a leader in your community in the future. And so again, think about what's important to you and what your next steps might entail as you're performing this upcoming service year. As you know, AmeriCorps members are distributed through all 50 states. They're also spread out through different territories like Guam and American Samoa and the Virgin Islands, the US Virgin Islands, that is. And they're also serving on tribal land. So there are AmeriCorps members who are working with American Indian and Native American populations at this same moment.
I'm not sure if you're aware also, something that I found out vicariously through my current position is there are approximately 250 different tribal lands in operation across the United States. So the number of tribal programs are just absolutely astonishing and amazing.
Yeah, that is really cool. I didn't know that, Ted, but thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So this is the service map that we have for Kentucky. This is reflective of this previous service year. So we're gonna get information once all of our programs enroll their new AmeriCorps members, and we're gonna create an updated version. But as you can see, we've got over 20 programs, and we have members serving in over 99 of the 120 counties in Kentucky. So there's AmeriCorps members distributed throughout the whole Commonwealth, in addition to being, you know, sometimes in, like I said, in your own backyard. And this map is only AmeriCorps state programs. This does not include people who are part of NCCC or VISTAs or national AmeriCorps programs.
And just so you know, even though you may think Morgan County is a tiny county, again, I lived in Ashland for a period of time. I'm familiar with the idea of a tiny county, and my son did run the occasional cross-country meet in Morgan County. So I've been there a couple of times, and it's not a matter of how small. It's even having an impact on one student in Morgan County is just an absolutely fantastic thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to see on the map, it looks like we've got Frisk, MSU, and Unite members all based in Morgan County. So obviously there's some other people who are part of they're part of your same cohort, but they're part of different programs. And so I don't know if you've had a chance to interact with any people in your past service year who are not part of MSU Corps, but there are other people in your same community serving, or they have been serving in the past few months. And I'd say there's a high likelihood that there's going to be more people in Morgan County who may not ever cross paths with you day to day, but that doesn't mean you can still interact with them and hopefully form connections and bonds and, you know, work through the whole service experience together.
On the Serve Kentucky website, actually, one of the things that we recently, I don't know that we've made it public access just yet, but I know it was developed. It is something that we're going to continue into the coming year. There is an interactive map that shows each individual county and where people are serving. So that would give you an idea of others, of the specific individuals who are also serving within Morgan County, and perhaps provide a vehicle for getting in touch and having some sort of a perhaps shared AmeriCorps experience.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously, Kelsey, you know, there's a lot of different moving parts, and sometimes we're struggling to keep everything organized. But, you know, the important thing is to recognize that there's a lot of different people out there. There's a lot of different opportunities. Both Ted and I now work for the State Service Commission. And, you know, so depending on what your goals are for yourself, life after AmeriCorps can be, there can be a lot of different opportunities. So it's just something to consider. And now that you're familiar with the program, and you're willing to hopefully talk with people in your community about it, we can continue sharing the message with other people. All right, so Kelsey, this is the end of the first part of the presentation. Like I said, we tried to get through it relatively quickly. Do you need to take a break or anything, or should we just go through the second part, which is prohibited and allowable activities? All right.
It's all good.
All right, you're good. So we're just gonna crush on through it. Excellent. So, all right. So prohibited and allowable activities. Obviously, by the name, that talks about what your service opportunities are, talks about what is appropriate for an AmeriCorps member to do as part of their service, and it talks what is not appropriate for a member to do. So the first part of this is unallowable activities. And I know this sounds like a semantic differentiation, but it's important because an unallowable activity is basically about how an AmeriCorps position is created and about what need it is supposed to fulfill. So as an AmeriCorps member, your position cannot duplicate an existing job or position within your state government or local government or an agency in your area. And it can't displace a person who is already there, who is not an AmeriCorps member doing a particular job or service. So it's important to recognize that AmeriCorps members fill needs in their communities, but they don't knock other people from and keep them from doing their work or replace them from doing their work. Like, they work alongside existing organizations. And so it's really important to recognize that, you know, as an AmeriCorps member, you have to deal with a lot of different people. You have to interact with a lot of different people. And it's important to recognize that nobody's job is more important than somebody else. We're not fighting for the same pool of resources. We're all working together to meet service needs in our communities. So the big prohibited activities are about politics and religion, as you probably remember. And the most important thing to remember about prohibited activities is that you cannot do them on AmeriCorps time, you cannot do them while wearing AmeriCorps logos, and you can't do them in a way where a normal person might reasonably assume that you are representing AmeriCorps. So prohibited activity is not something that is illegal. It's just something that is prohibited in the terms of service for your AmeriCorps member service agreement. So these are some specific examples of prohibited activity in politics. It's not that you can't have your own political opinions, and you can obviously still have your own belief system in your own life, but while serving as an AmeriCorps member, you cannot work to influence legislation. You cannot organize for a partisan political group. You cannot work to run in an election or volunteer for an election on AmeriCorps time. And you have to be careful about religious instruction. So you cannot proselytize, you cannot lead worship services, you cannot pick and choose who gets to receive AmeriCorps, the benefits of your service program based on what church they belong to or what their religious or ethnic background is. And then lastly, obviously, as an AmeriCorps member, we don't want you anywhere near the issue of abortion. We don't want you to to advocate for or against a for-profit business or a union. And so the idea is that you have to serve alongside a very wide variety of different community stakeholders. And we want to make sure that nobody, while you're doing your service, nobody could reasonably interpret you as engaging in anything that is political or religious or advocating for a business or something like that. So it just kind of gets down to the basic idea that if we're using federal dollars to help support AmeriCorps programs, we don't want to support anything that is, there's the idea of like separation of church and state. And we want to make sure that we're not advocating for a particular group or party or something like that.
Yes, all of your other rights still apply. You still have freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion and all of those things. But part of being an American, understanding the inevitable connection between anything that you do with an AmeriCorps logo on your person and how that represents AmeriCorps.
Yeah, thank you, Ted, because I think that's important to recognize that, Kelsey, as you already know, when you put on your AmeriCorps shirt, you're not just Kelsey, you're also the AmeriCorps representative for MSU. You're a part of your community. A lot of people look up to you. They probably view you as like a good source of information, as a hard worker, as somebody who knows a lot about the different types of service activities you perform. And so it's important to add that extra layer of critical thinking so that way you're cognizant of how people perceive you and you don't act in a way that could even be perceived as biased or unfair about some of these particular issues. So that's why we're always really harping on the idea that a prohibited activity is something that you don't do while you're performing your service hours. You don't do it when you're at an event that you're representing as an AmeriCorps member, and you don't do it when you're wearing a logo. So below in the lower part of the screen, in the lower part of the screen, we've got the policy quoted specifically.
Yeah.
So religious activities cannot endorse or promote or appear to endorse or promote a specific religion or religious belief. You cannot give instruction, conduct worship services, or engage in religious activity. And you cannot proselytize or offer instruction or do anything that would like give textbooks for certain materials associated with your program that have a particular religious viewpoint or outlook. Let's see, members who serve. So this clause is for members. This doesn't actually apply to you directly, but this is for members who serve in an institution that hosts AmeriCorps members. You cannot use the AmeriCorps members to replace people. So for example, if you are a church and you have a nonprofit wing and you give lunches to after school people, to the children after school, and normally the pastor at your church gives out the lunches, you can't use an AmeriCorps member to replace the role of the pastor in that particular program if that's the job of the pastor. So again, it's about making sure that the role of the AmeriCorps is separate from the role of the organization that is sponsoring the activity. And it's also really important to remember that you can't tie AmeriCorps service to attendance in church. You can't tie the benefits that people are going to receive based on whether or not they're part of the right religious group or that they meet your criteria as a religious person. AmeriCorps is for everybody. The benefits should be available to anybody who needs it. And the idea is that we are an open, apolitical, and nonpartisan organization that tries to meet needs in the community wherever they may be. So we try to create these rules and regulations to help keep our members on mission and to make sure that we don't get caught up debating politics or religion when there's people who need help. In the context of the political realm, members are not allowed to lobby, which means they're not allowed to actively influence the passage or defeat of legislation or legislative proposals. You cannot wear your AmeriCorps clothing when you go to political events. You can't speak for AmeriCorps or pretend to speak for AmeriCorps or act in a way where a person could reasonably assume that you're speaking for the AmeriCorps program or for CNCS or whatever. And you need to make sure that, you know, whatever you do as far as demonstrating is concerned, that it doesn't influence, or it doesn't interfere with your responsibilities as a member. So the idea is not that we're abridging your free speech rights, but by signing on as an AmeriCorps member, you know that you have to create a little bit of boundary between some aspects of your personal life and some aspects of your AmeriCorps life. So we've talked about social media in other presentations. It's always important to make sure that if you're sharing a political opinion, that your avatar or that your profile photo or whatever isn't a picture of the AmeriCorps logo. It's not to say that you can't share your own opinions, but we want to make sure that people wouldn't reasonably assume that you as an AmeriCorps member are sharing an inherently political opinion. That would be you taking off your AmeriCorps hat and putting on your civilian hat, and never shall the twain meet, at least in that area. Likewise, with politics, you're not allowed to influence an election. You can't knowingly solicit or discourage political activity on behalf of CNCS or your AmeriCorps program, and you are not allowed to run for office in a partisan political race while you're an AmeriCorps member. As soon as your service is up, you can run for whatever office you want, but it wouldn't reflect well on you or the program if, as an AmeriCorps member, you also have this other side of your personality that is a public figure competing for a public office. That makes AmeriCorps look inherently political, and that's something that we're trying to avoid. You cannot wear political buttons while serving as an AmeriCorps member. So we've had some questions about what does political mean? And for our purposes, we're gonna say that political means anything that has to do with an established political party. Doesn't matter whether it's Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Communist, Green Party, Neo-Nazi Party, whatever. You can't wear a button that supports a particular established political party. You can't wear a button that is for or against abortion. You can't wear a button that is in favor of a particular, you know, religious outcome or something like that. So we want to be clear that while you're serving, that is not an appropriate time to express yourself that way. It's also important to recognize that on this slide, they talk about engaging in political activity while using a vehicle owned or leased by AmeriCorps or an AmeriCorps program. So this is a good time to clarify that prohibited activities also apply to equipment and infrastructure and things that members are allowed to use. So it's not enough for you to, for example, if you get a cell phone from your program, even though you go home at night and you take off your AmeriCorps shirt and you text your friends or share stuff on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, if you're sharing partisan political opinions, it's not appropriate to use your AmeriCorps service phone because, again, the federal government is helping pay for that. And so we don't want to use taxpayer dollars to support something that is fundamentally partisan or political and divisive. We encourage people, to maintain their social lives and everything like that. We do not want you to share your political opinions in the same breath that you say you're an AmeriCorps member. We don't want you sharing your logo on your feeds or on your public media, on your public social media profiles, if possible. It's not because we're not proud of that. It's just, it gets really sticky really quick when people are trying to differentiate between a person's private viewpoints and about the role they serve as an AmeriCorps member. In the same way that—
Again, it's not that we don't want you to have those personal opinions or feelings. If anything, I wish there were a way we were able to help people better articulate their own personal positions and feelings. But again, that's beyond the scope of what Serve Kentucky is meant to do.
Yeah, definitely. So again, it's not about limiting what you do. It's just about being responsible and respectful when you do it. So if you do want to share your own private opinions, make sure you do it on your own device, on your own time, and when you're not wearing the AmeriCorps logo or in a situation where people could mistake you as being an AmeriCorps member representing AmeriCorps. Likewise, in the same way that you're not allowed to talk about for-profit businesses or abortion or things like that, we also don't want you to advocate for or against labor unions, because that is has been deemed to be an inherently political activity. And so there's no real way to bring that issue up and not have it fall on one side of the political spectrum. Now, in the context of what you do as part of your day-to-day service, we've talked a lot about prohibited. Allowable activities are pretty much everything else. Hopefully your allowable activities, the things that you're supposed to be doing as part of your service, are going to be listed in your member service agreement that you sign when you go over your position, or they're in the member position description that gets posted on My AmeriCorps, or online if you found your position through like a job website or something like that. Obviously, the activities need to align with the grant that supports them. They need to be beneficial for the community, beneficial to the host site, and they need to have a real tangible output. They can't just be something that looks good on paper but doesn't actually accomplish anything. If you have any questions about the activities that you do at your service site, please contact Joe or somebody in your program. Ask them, let them know if you have any questions about that, so that way you can stay on task and do the activities that you need to do. So we're just going to go through some quick examples. I would appreciate it if you can participate. I know this is a little goofy since you're the only one, but I'm going to put you and Ted on the spot. We're going to go through two of these, and one will be a little bit easy and one will be a little bit hard. And I want you to think about whether or not the activity is allowable or prohibited based on the presentation we just went through. So during her free time, an AmeriCorps member has been frequently sharing her political position regarding the upcoming gubernatorial election on Facebook. The member's Facebook profile shows her wearing the AmeriCorps service gear issued by her program at the beginning of the service year. So, according to CNCS rules, is this a prohibited activity or an allowable activity for the AmeriCorps member? Ted, this is a gimme, right?
I want to say that one is prohibited.
Yeah, this one's
because of the of the logo in her personal all-time icon. If that were removed, then those would be allowable posts.
Yeah, it depends. There's a few things at play. So like, we don't necessarily want members commenting on partisan political races. There might be governor's races that aren't partisan. I'm not 100% sure. I know in Kentucky, you have to be part of a political party to run for the governor's office. But so that's another giveaway about why that wouldn't be allowable. But the big one, as Ted said, is because the member's Facebook profile shows her wearing the AmeriCorps gear, and thus, even though the activity is taking place in her free time, a person could look at that and they might assume that, oh, this person is speaking on behalf of AmeriCorps or their service program. So we will skip this one. Here's a good one. Following the destruction of a local church, a team of AmeriCorps members want to volunteer to help clear debris away from the site so reconstruction can begin. The members live in the community and they serve at a nonprofit where many church members and staff are part of the destroyed church. The members would volunteer on their own time with their families and friends to help the church. So according to CNCS rules, if this AmeriCorps team wants to help clear debris away from a church site, and they're going to do it on their own time with their family and friends. Is this activity prohibited or allowable? What do you think about this one, Ted?
I'm pretty sure that it is allowable, again, as long as no time is being recorded. If there is being time charged against the grant, I do have to be honest, I'm on the fence because it is a recovery effort and could be framed appropriately that it could be allowable. But
Yeah,
it depends on how that activity is worded and captured on a timesheet.
yeah, I thought this one was a little tricky too, but the answer is that it is allowable because the members are not doing any sort of recruitment. All they're doing is on their own time, they're clearing debris away from the church. So you're right, you're both right. Even though this is AmeriCorps members interacting with the church in a church setting, they're doing it on their own time, and they're doing it in a way that doesn't have anything to do with proselytizing or recruiting people for the church. All it is literally clearing debris away from a disaster. So,
right, and again, even if they were, if they had spoken to the program director and their host site immediate supervisor, site supervisor, and they had said yes, the cleanup and recovery efforts do fall within the scope of our grant, as long as it is put in terms of cleanup and instead of I helped the church and all of these people and we worshiped while we cleaned, and it's all in how it is documented in terms of the activity.
yeah, I agree. It's again, it's not that you can't do anything related to religion at all in your free time, or you can't do anything related to politics at all in your free time. You just need to make sure that you're not doing it as a representative of AmeriCorps. You're not doing it in a way that people could see you and reasonably assume that you're standing in for your program or for CNCS or something like that. And you just need to be mindful of that distinction between your personal life and your professional life as an AmeriCorps member. So, and not use any AmeriCorps equipment if you're gonna engage in any of this. But otherwise, like Ted said, we don't wanna abridge people's free speech. There's a lot of people are really passionate right now about certain issues, you know, and they're all the things that you hear about on TV and the radio, the hot button stuff. It's like guns, you know, social justice, you know, the birth control and the right to life. I mean, there's all these different things and people have opinions. And the thing is, it's always been like that. AmeriCorps has always existed in a relatively polarized atmosphere where people feel very strongly. And the fact of the matter is that they still have to perform their service. And if as an AmeriCorps member, as you know, Kelsey, you still have to learn how to interact with people who may think 180 degrees totally different from how you do. And the important thing is to remember that, you know, we all value service. We all appreciate our communities. And so when you're on the clock as an AmeriCorps member, you don't have to pretend to be a different person. All you do is you just think about, what am I going to do in order to be able to engage with people, even if they don't agree with me or I don't agree with them in terms of our personal opinions. And that's one of the beautiful things about AmeriCorps is that, you know, Serve Kentucky is the State Service Commission. So we oversee all the state programs, and we have a commission that's sort of like our board of directors that's appointed by the governor's office. And we've had commissioners who are appointed from Democratic governors and Republican governors, and we don't ask people to keep that private. The idea is that everybody, regardless of whatever your political beliefs are, can find something valuable about serving their community. And so that's our central mission. Is we lean into that. We say, it's not that we live in a world that doesn't have political differences. It's that we work together in spite of that to make real change in our communities.
I used to have as an email tagline, be the change you want to see. And we are really striving hard this year to get members to understand that your service is that very thing. Service is the opportunity for you to provide the change in somebody's life. And that speaks volumes in and of itself.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is the last one. This one, I think I actually got this one wrong when we went over this. So this one's kind of a trick question, but I'd be curious to see how you guys do. The AmeriCorps members are serving in a large after-school program and they want to petition the city's mayor. Members provide academic enrichment activities and the mayor is considering cutting public transit passes for the kids attending the after-school programs. So the mayor is not cutting the program, they're cutting transit passes for kids who want to attend the programs. The members are concerned that their students will no longer be able to participate in the program. They argue that the city's budget has nothing to do with the AmeriCorps and they should be allowed to petition the mayor and earn their service hours for doing so. So according to CNCS rules, is this a prohibited or allowable activity for AmeriCorps members? Yeah, I'd be curious. Let's see what Ted says. All right, so we got split house, allowable and prohibited. The answer is, hang on, prohibited. Yeah, it's close. It's very close because the issue is that the members, even though they're not advocating, it doesn't matter that the mayor is Democratic or Republican. The issue is that they're petitioning for a specific policy outcome, and petition.
Yes, and you can't petition without soliciting signatures from somebody to agree with you on a particular point of view, and that's the tricky part, is that you are taking a particular point of view with respect to the situation. And,
right. So if they talk to somebody,
nuanced.
if they talk to somebody who wasn't a political figure, and they said, "Hey, we want to get support for our after school students. Is there anything you can do?" That would actually probably be an allowable activity because you're not talking to a political figure and you're not advocating for a particular policy outcome. But when you say, "Hey, we want to talk to the mayor and we want to ask the mayor to reinstate public transit," that's when you're talking to a specific political figure and you're asking for a specific political outcome. And that's the difference, is that you're not allowed to petition as a member. So it's not that you can't talk to public figures or political figures, but you can't.
Or even the general public, your general, well, not that as a tutor for elementary and middle school aged kids, they not necessarily be nuanced to the level to understand the need for the additional transit passes, but perhaps those children's parents, if the host site might be willing to host an informative session for parents to come and learn about the importance of transit passes. That would be possibly an allowable activity, provided, again, the fact that the program's viability depends on transportation for students after school, and presenting it from an advocacy standpoint, instead of this has to be this way and we've got X number of signatures saying it should be.
Right. So Ted, we should give a little bit of context. Ted deals with a lot of legalese and he has to read a lot of policy that comes from the federal government. So he's gotten really good at going word by word through it, almost like a lawyer, to see all the different possible interpretations that you can get from a particular policy. And he's really good at saying, well, they didn't say you can't do this. And so that's what allows him to kind of go through and pick apart these kind of tricky, thorny situations. So there's no...
I'm an English major and I love tearing words to bits and getting down to their very true meanings.
All right, we're gonna do one more and then we'll wrap it up. So AmeriCorps members are serving in an after-school program where students are learning about the different rescue workers in the community. one student is having a difficult time with the subject and they want the member to talk with the student. The student expresses that she wants to stand up against police brutality, and they ask the member, the AmeriCorps member, if they can help create a sign to put outside of her house. The member gathers some materials, and then the student wants to write a specific message, and the member will help spell the words. So, according to your understanding of CNCS policy, is this allowable or prohibited? Yeah, this one, I totally got this one wrong. What do you think, Ted?
Just trying to put it into words.
All right.
It is a completely, sorry, the kitten is just way out of control. There's a storm.
That's okay.
Wake up. It is a complete gray area, actually. It totally depends on how things are documented and the words used to describe the activity, because there are both allowable and unallowable things that are occurring in the course of this activity.
Yeah, definitely. So there is an answer to this, and I will share it to you, but I will, as someone who wants to keep everybody from getting out of trouble, I would say if you ever come into a situation that even remotely resembles this, talk to your program director first.
Yeah.
I would try to get as much input from your site supervisor or your program director, because this is a sensitive issue. It could go bad relatively easily. And in this particular situation, we say that it is allowable because the member is not influencing the student. All they're doing is acting as a tool to get the student's own expression out there. And so therefore, they are not influencing anybody and they are not organizing anything. All they are is just literally like a scribe or a secretary who's writing down, helping to write down the materials. Now that's a really fine distinction. And like I said, if you ever came across a situation like this, I would strongly advocate talking with somebody and just making sure that you understand the issue clearly and making sure that you can get some feedback from them. If for whatever reason you ever come across, or any of your colleagues, any of your other AmeriCorps members come across something like this and you can't get a clear answer, you can reach out to Carrie or Ted or myself, and we will try to help you out to the best of our ability. But you know, sometimes crazy stuff like this happens, and it's just important to be respectful and responsible. And we will all help you. We'll all help work through situations like this when they arise, because they're
Absolutely. When in doubt, err on the side of caution.
right.
Always protect yourself and the others who you are serving, and then let them know that you will be, you can ask somebody else, and then look into getting some guidance yourself, and make sure you're clear on your own thoughts and the motivation and the reasons behind things. That is very important in understanding how things can be allowable and or not allowable, possibly even at the same time. Again, this is a big gray area, but since something like this can be allowable, I think it's a good thing. And again, it does depend on how things are documented and the actual words that are used.
Yeah, like Ted said, we just want to keep everybody on message. We don't want to inhibit or curtail anybody's free speech or their basic human rights. We have no desire to be judges or to get people in trouble. We just want to make sure that everyone can do their service and interact with all sorts of different people in the community without creating hardship or hurt feelings or anything like that. So that is basically the end of the activity. One thing that I do—
You made it.
Yeah, you made it all the way through. We appreciate that. One thing I do want to share is that we have launch coming up this year. We're probably going to do launch virtually in an effort to keep people safe and to avoid getting 400 people from all over the state in one enclosed area. I don't think that would be really prudent right now, just given everything that's happening with coronavirus. So we will probably,
It's fun, it's just not necessarily safe.
yeah, exactly. So we will try to do a virtual event probably in the middle to end of October. And we want to connect you with other members, both in your program and just other people who are serving at the same time as you. So we'll share some more information about that in the future. And once again, if you have any questions about your service, if you have any issues with your service site, if you can't get a response from your program director, feel free to reach out to Ted or myself or Carrie, who's the program manager, and we'll try to take care of you as best we can and make sure that you have a good second year. Is there anything that we can do for you, or do you have any other questions for us, Kelsey? All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting through this. I know this is kind of a weird, super personal training session, but we appreciate your willingness to be really bubbly and engaged in the chat box, and I hope it was meaningful for you. And like I said, I'll type in my email address in the box. If you need anything, by all means, reach out to me. And we hope you have a really great service here. We hope that you're staying healthy and safe and you're not doing anything crazy. And let us know if we can do anything else, and take care, all right?
And my emotional support kitten says, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, Kelsey. Thank you.